All right, hello and welcome to the Puck Report. We're deep into season 6 here. Today, I've tried to get Mike on a few times here, and our schedules just don't coordinate. But when we talk about people who are having a real impact on Utah hockey, it's hard to talk about that without talking about Mike Adamek and his brothers. So, Mike, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome, Jay.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Totally.
Mike, you and I go back a ways. Our paths keep crossing. And I think, we talk about, whatever, Utah Grizzlies and where our paths have crossed in the past.
Yeah.
But when we start talking about people that are coaching and really involved, like you're basically running Park City. You really changed a lot of what was going on in Park City for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far, right? I'm the hockey director. We got a board, right? We have great coaches here. I got, some other leadership guys that I definitely lean on for help.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys have built an amazing team up there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Before we get into all of that, though, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and the hockey that you were playing as you were growing up. Like, what's your first hockey memory? How old were you?
Yeah. So I think probably my first hockey memory is Wayne Gretzky getting traded to the Kings. Swear to God. I started playing hockey a couple months before that, down in San Diego. I have a brother, Mark, who's a year younger than me, and then another brother, Nick, who's 4 years younger than me, so 3 years younger than Mark. And we started just by going to an open skate in San Diego, and all three of us could kind of skate pretty much right away. My mom's side of the family had been LA Kings fans growing up, so we wanted to try hockey. I was, I think, 7. Mark was 6. Nick probably didn't start until after us, if I remember correctly. But yeah, started in San Diego, California. I was actually looking through some of my old like a trophy box my mom brought over to the house. I was pulling out obviously Christmas decorations, and I saw that box, and I pulled it out, and I was looking at some of them and some of the trophies, and it was like Squirt B in San Diego, Skaha, definitely didn't start as a, awesome hockey player right off the bat, even in U10s. I played youth hockey in San Diego until I think U12s, and then played for the Junior Ducks in Anaheim with my brother Mark. We were on the same U12 team that we went to Quebec City that year. Super fun. That's kind of probably when I started really falling in love with hockey, thinking that I wanted to do that for, long term, whatever that may be as a 12-year-old. And then my family moved to Northern California before my 8th grade season. And then I played junior sharks for the rest of my youth career, if you will, and left my junior year of high school to play midget AAA, and then kind of played all over the place after that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
You talk about how hard it is to get out of Salt Lake, but I mean, San Diego specifically was kind of a dead market for a long time too. So,
Man, we had 2 sheets of ice when I was growing up for the whole county. I grew up in northern San Diego County, Fallbrook near Escondido, but we had to go all the way to La Jolla or Mira Mesa, which is kind of a far drive, especially with San Diego traffic. We only got to skate once or twice a week when I was a kid until I started playing for the Junior Ducks, and then obviously we drove to Anaheim, which was hour and a half each way.
yeah,
five,
geez.
6 days a week. Yeah. My parents were crazy.
Your parents were definitely dedicated, and that's awesome to hear
Yes.
about. Like everybody has to have that obligatory trophy box at your mom, or usually I think it's the dads that usually can't let go of those trophies.
No, my mom was the one that put a box together for all 3 of the boys. Actually, I have 2 sisters as well. They were athletes. I know they got a box as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So after junior sharks, where did you play after that?
So, I went to Vail, Colorado, actually, for my first year of midget AAA. I was 16, junior year. Um, That was 1997, I believe. And there was a AAA team in Vail for 3 or 4 or 5 seasons, maybe. We actually had a really good program. Craig Norwich, I don't know if you know the name.
Oh, yeah.
He played in the NHL for a while. He was my coach there. We had kids from California, Colorado, Alaska, kind of all over the West Coast, if you will. And that was when I started playing like every single day. That was when hockey became, quote unquote, a job, something that I wanted to make a career as much as possible out of. Was what it started in Vail.
Wow, what an amazing place to play. Like,
It was pretty awesome.
I'm trying to remember, is it Vel that has like the old school wooden,
Yeah.
but
Dobson.
it's an arena, but it's like an
Yeah.
awesome built old school arena.
Unbelievable. My daughter just went to a tournament out there, and my wife sent me a bunch of pictures, and it was still the same Dobson Arena. You kind of described it. It's an old school kind of barn, if you will. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
But
Couple different levels.
an arena barn, like it probably holds a couple thousand, right?
Yeah, probably 3.
Oh wow.
Yeah, maybe a little bit less, maybe not quite that much.
That's my dream, is to get that arena, that style arena here somewhere.
Yeah,
I know like a lot of the sight lines aren't great, or there were some weird seats there, but
yeah,
Tegan played there a few years ago, my son.
yeah.
I just fell in love with Vel and that arena, and I was like, oh my, this is perfect.
It's right in that. Is it Lions Head Village too? Right in
Yeah,
town.
yeah, it was
It was a
perfect.
great place to play midgets. Actually, part of the reason it was so cool is all of us that were kind of recruited from out of this, the state essentially, went to the same high school. And so it was like playing high school hockey, but not without playing for the high school. You know what I mean? We all had classes together. We really bonded just by being in the same high school too.
Yeah, that's cool. I always thought that was one of the reasons that Shattuck St. Mary's kind of stood apart, is because even though, well, back in the day they were just high school, but then when they weren't allowed to play high school, they were divided up. It was the same thing. You're playing midget AAA, but you're going to high school together and living together,
Totally.
and it just created this amazing bond. And you could live and breathe hockey.
Totally. You're doing homework with your classmates. That's also your right winger. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah.
And I think obviously as hockey players, just spending any time together, especially at that 16 formative age, like there was some real bonds there for sure. And it
So
makes people want to play harder for each other. Like that
yeah,
team was really successful. We won our regional, and then I think we like made it to the quarters at nationals, took like 5th place in nationals. It was a pretty good team. I think 4 or 5 kids and from that team ended up playing D1 too. So
that's just too bad that that's not still there. Like
totally,
that's
I agree.
Norwich. I mean, he did an amazing job as a hockey player himself, but then the stuff he's done, like those Minnesota,
Yep.
not Minnesota hockey schools, but those like the Craig Norwich Academy or whatever he
Yep.
was running before, he's put a ton of guys into Division 1 or Division 3. So where did
Good
you end up
hockey
playing
stuff.
out? Where'd you end up going after that?
So from there, I actually I got drafted. I can't remember if it was drafted or tendered. Picked up by the junior or the Lancers, Omaha. Um, Went to training camp, did the whole summer with them. Didn't end up making the team my first year junior, so that would have been my senior year. I was 17. But Mike Hastings wanted me to, you know, play for someone that he liked in the North American League. And I went and played for Tom Rudrud in Grand Rapids because they were buddies, I believe, with the intention of possibly playing in Omaha the following season. But I fell in love with the NAHL and kind of stayed there. I did try again later in my junior career to make it back to the USHL, but was never fortunate enough to make a regular season roster in the USHL. So I played all 4 seasons of my junior career in the North American League.
Seems like you've got 16, 17, 17, 18. You've got to be in the USHL at that point so they can kind of develop you and you're their own, or they just don't bring in a lot of guys after that.
So I'm 42. It was a little bit different back then, right? The USHL was probably a little bit older than it is now. But yeah, for the most part, I would say that's the truth, right? They don't really want to bring in a 20-year-old guy to play on a USHL team very often.
So after the NA, did you go play college?
I did. I played at Lake Superior State in the UP in the CCHA for 4 years. My brother Mark and I were freshmen there together. We actually played juniors for about two full seasons together, and then my last year, junior, my 20-year-old year, his 19-year-old year, we both ended up signing to go to play at Lake State as freshmen together.
Yeah, that's cool. I
It
knew
was
you went
super
there.
cool.
I just had to
Yeah.
ask the question.
Yeah.
So tell me about your experience at Lake Superior. Like that's a fun school to play at, and it's
Yeah.
for a while there they were super competitive, like with Maine and all those schools.
Totally. So I was a little bit after Lake State's heyday. The national championships were won mostly in the early 90s, mid 90s, but obviously still a CCHA program when I got there. My brother and I were a class of 15 freshmen, which was huge.
Wow.
So we came in with a new coach our freshman year. It was Frank Ansel in his first season back in Sault Ste. Marie. He had coached I believe one or two of the national championship teams, and then went and coached some pro, and then came back to Lake State. So we struggled for definitely my freshman year and a lot of my sophomore year. We were pretty low on the totem pole in the CCHA. But, when 15 freshmen become 13, 14 juniors, hopefully that's when you start finding success. And then by my senior year, we were pretty good. We were ranked for part of the season, but ended up losing in the first round of the CCHA playoffs and didn't make it to any postseason play.
But yeah, that's one of the things. It's you see 15 freshmen coming in, you're like, okay, that's clearly a complete rebuild.
Yep.
But then you're like, what is that going to be like that
Yep.
senior year? If they can keep all those guys and keep some momentum and develop those
Totally.
guys.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it kept recruiting down for a while. Like again, talking about the team bonding type atmosphere, right? We were really, there wasn't a whole lot of change in faces for a year or two, right? And actually when we started, bringing in, 4 or 5 kids per class again, my junior, senior year, they were starting to get a little bit more talent, right? And it was not necessarily, I wouldn't say a destination, right, by any means, but definitely it was easier to recruit as my freshman class got older.
yeah, I just remember I'm a little bit older than you, and I
Yeah.
remember as I was looking to go to college and I was looking at some of the teams that wouldn't even talk to you unless you were an All American were Maine and Lake State,
Yeah.
and then North Dakota. Those 3 schools, like if you were on their radar, you were a USHL All American, and then
Yeah.
the rest of us were like, which part
yeah.
of Alaska do we play for, or can we get into the Naval Academy? Those were our
Yeah.
only options.
So I remember watching my grandfather growing up in San Diego had a satellite dish. And I remember watching Lake Superior State play University of Illinois Chicago when I was like 10 years old. I had no idea what I was watching. And then when, I got into juniors and started, talking with Lake State, that was one of the first memories that came back to me regarding Lake Superior State University. Lake State's a pretty cool place. It's in Sault Ste. Marie. I don't know if you've ever been to the Sioux. It's a cool place. Small town. I think it's 8,000 people. When the team's good, they really support the Lakers. Lots of cool traditions. We ring a bell in the parking lot after every home win. Guys are in half their gear. They run through, ring the bell once. It's a cool spot. And like I said, 8,000 people at the top of the UP. Hockey was it.
Yeah.
It felt like people recognized you and stuff. You know what I mean? And I never had that before, which was awesome. I loved it.
What a cool experience, and a lot of people just don't understand that. It just that's one of the cool things about college hockey. And it doesn't matter if you win a national championship. I mean, it kind of matters. In the long
Yeah.
run, you always wanted that. But really what it's all about is you got a degree, you got to go to college, and you had an unbelievable experience. I tell
Totally.
parents that all the time. They're like, well, if he's not going to go here, and I'm like, no, let him go wherever he wants to go, or she. I
Yep.
don't care if you've ever even heard of the school. It's going to have
Totally.
its own traditions. It's going to have its own fans. And even when people were just like starting with Arizona State, I'm like, there's an opportunity to build all those traditions.
Absolutely.
What an amazing
Absolutely.
experience. So
Yeah.
cool.
And
Um,
doing it with my brother for all 4
yeah,
years was made it that much cooler, right?
yeah, for sure.
We were roommates for my last 3 years. Um, we actually had another guy. His name is Corey Scorin. He played for Boise. Runs the or not Boise, Idaho, the Steelheads.
I actually know
He
Corey.
yeah, he runs the city of Boise ice hockey. Whether I think it does like he does most of the learn to play in the high school there, but he was our roommate too for 3 seasons. We had a really good time.
That's awesome. That could go
Yeah,
either way though, right? With your own brother, because it's either you're super tight as brothers or you're
yeah.
just sick of each other as brothers by the time it happens. But it's
So
your choice.
it,
Like you're not
yeah,
stumbling.
we went through both of those, right? Like uh honestly, my brother and I we'd fist fight every once in a while, even in college, right? And then we'd be good for 6 months until we got sick of each other again, and it would come to blows, and then we'd go back to being good again.
That's awesome. I had the unique experience of spending a couple summers with Peter and Chris Ferraro, who are twin brothers that ended up playing for the New York Rangers.
Yep.
And they everything would be just fine, and then one of them would say something stupid, and then all of a sudden they'd start with a slap fight,
Yep.
which would put the rest of us in tears laughing because you've never seen two, 18, 19-year old, well, we thought we were men at the time, but 18 or 19-year olds slap fighting each other, and then they'd go to blows, and then it'd be
Yep.
all over and they'd be fine.
Yep.
And then I also had an experience when I was playing Canadian juniors. We had brothers on our team, and then they traded one of the brothers
Oh yeah.
to the team across town. We all played for the same junior college, but then we were also like subbing in on these junior teams. And they went at it like it was one of the most intense fights I've ever seen on the ice, just getting all their frustrations out when we played against them. And
I got a
but
pretty funny story regarding that. So,
let's hear it. Let's
um,
hear it.
so my brother and I obviously played 4 years of college together, like I said, and then I believe it was our first year of pro. He was in San Diego. I was in Boise, and we were playing each other for a 3 game series, like the last series of the season, and we were both warming up downstairs at the sports arena, um, and my brother's team, the goals were, a couple 100 yards away. After we were both done with the pregame warm up, Mark and I came together, just, exchanged hellos. How's it going? Good luck today. And I told him, the boys in the locker room have offered me money if you and I fight. And he said, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. We can't go there. So it didn't
uh,
end up happening. But we actually fought on the ice a few times in junior tryouts and stuff like that, practice as well.
nice. So
Yeah,
who got the better? Did you guys split, or did you
I
always
think it was
dominate because you're
probably.
older?
I would say we would both probably agree it was an even split.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
All right. So after Lake, obviously you went pro. You were with the Idaho Steelheads for a while.
yep.
Is
So that was after my senior season. Um, when we lost in the first round of the CCHA playoffs, I signed with Boise, Corey and I, and another one of my teammates, Alex Dunn. So we finished there, kind of end of the season there. I played, I believe, 15 games, and then went back to the Sioux Lake State to do the whole graduation process. Turn in all my stuff, graduate, walk, all that. And I didn't play on the playoff roster. Corey went back and ended up playing on the playoff roster. I think they did really well that year. I believe they actually might have made it to the finals or something like that. I didn't end up re-signing with Boise over the summer because Mark and I wanted to try and play together in San Diego. We ended up both signing in San Diego, and the goals, remember, they took a little hiatus there. They like 3 days after we signed, that's when they started their, I think, 2 or 3 season hiatus. So we ended up not playing together. I then went to Stockton, for training camp, didn't make the team, and ended up playing in the UHL and in Bloomington for, I believe, 30-ish, 35 games. So the first half of the year, and then got traded. Well, not traded, kind of asked to be assigned to Tulsa in the Central League, and then finished my first full season there in Tulsa.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's quite a lot of bouncing around. Were there times where you're like, it's just not going to work, maybe I should go do something else? Or you're just like, I'm just going to keep going as long as I can?
Yeah, that definitely came into play, especially I got married right after I graduated. So my wife, who is like the smartest person I know, was having to do these menial jobs, wherever I ended up getting traded to or signing with. And it kind of wore on her a little bit and me, right? So after that season in Tulsa, we came here to Park City just for the summer. We were going to stay for the summer, but she applied to some, adult jobs and got a job with Sundance.
Oh,
And so that was kind of the point at where I was like, it's time to stop, it's time to support her career, if you will, you know what I mean? And I knew I wasn't going to play in the show or anything like that. So I had a really good time doing it for, 150, 75, whatever, 80 games. And then getting into coaching pretty much right off the bat was really helped me not miss the game, if you will. A lot of guys, when they retire, they step away from the game completely, and I didn't do that whatsoever. So,
yeah, it's always confused me because hockey's my religion. And then you watch
right.
guys that are like, they stop playing, so they've played every day, and it's either,
Yeah.
I guess, they just walk away and they hate it. We've talked about it on the show before. I talked to Jordan Parisi about it quite a bit, actually. He's
Yeah.
actually he's co-hosted the show quite a bit, and he's like, I will never put on the pads again. I'll never play goalie again. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't get that. I'm 50. Of course, I didn't have his career, right? I didn't grow up playing it. I never had a chance to actually play or be drafted or talk to an
Well,
NHL team. But it's like, what makes you just walk away from it? That's never entered my mind. And most of the people I know don't want to walk away from it. We still play.
yeah. I think obviously a lot goes into that, right? I feel like I, as a player, kind of overachieved growing up in California. You know what I mean? Um, doesn't I didn't even think about playing professional hockey even at Lake State. That wasn't really even on my radar, right? It just came about kind of naturally after my senior year. And so it was easier for me to walk away, not really walk away, but and stop playing at a professional level because I felt like I had overachieved.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Did you ever set a goal for yourself?
Yeah, I
Like,
wanted to play college hockey.
uh,
When I was about, I don't know, probably 14, 15. Um, I had been playing, AAA for a couple seasons in California. Back then it was not the same as it is now. We had, 10, 11, 12 kids on our roster. We were just fighting to even be competitive with, even just the West Coast AAA teams. But when I think probably when I made it to the Select 16 Festival as for USA Hockey's Select Festival was in Ann Arbor. That's probably when I really started having the goal of playing college hockey. And I hadn't made it to juniors yet, so obviously that was the next step goal,
yeah,
right?
yeah, nope.
Wanted to make a junior team.
Yeah. It's weird because growing up here, I had no idea what there was. I didn't start playing until I was, in high school. So
Mm-hmm.
my sophomore year at Murray, I tried out for Murray High, and I'm like, this is the pinnacle. This is amazing. I'm playing,
Yeah.
I get to practice once a week, and I have one game a week. And then before my junior year, our high school coach said, "Hey, you're going to be our only goalie, so you need to go learn how to play goal and learn
Yeah.
anything about hockey." So he sent me to Minnesota. That's when I got to
Yeah.
Shattuck. And while I was there, I was like, "Oh, there's a lot more to this that nobody's ever told me about any of this stuff. I didn't know all these different
Totally.
levels, and there's all these players that were at that same camp. I mean, I was there with Joe Thornton, and like there were some legit players there, and I was like, this is amazing. And then when they offered me the opportunity to stay there and play play baseball and soccer, and I'm like, do I still get to play hockey?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, you can play hockey here. And then that's the point where I'm like, I want to actually do this. I want to play hockey for the rest of my life.
Yep. Yep.
They sat me down and they're like, what? They wanted to know what my goal was. And I said, just to keep playing. And they said, well, you have to have
Yeah.
a goal. And the only thing I could think of is like, I want to play on a team that plays the national anthem before the game. I want to be on the ice. I want to take off my mask.
That's
At
awesome.
the time it was just a helmet, right? Like I just wanted to be on the ice when they do it. I'd seen the Golden Eagles do it, and I'd seen some tapes of the Shattuck St. Mary's
Yeah.
team doing it, and I'd watch
That's
college, and
cool.
I was like, that's so cool that they get to do that. But in
Yeah.
Utah, we only have an hour to get a high school game, so there's no songs, there's no
Yeah.
warm up to get, you know. So it's weird to have goals and have no idea how to set a goal.
Jay, to be honest, I was kind of in the same boat. Like, it sounds like we were both kind of non-traditional hockey families, right? Definitely non-traditional hockey areas. San
Yeah,
Diego and Salt Lake are not, known for their hockey. My dad was a avocado farmer.
no
um,
way.
had no idea about what hockey was, and so I think, like you said, seeing other really good players, like I said, was at my first time kind of really seeing a lot of good players. Only was at Select Festival. That is, I was kind of in the same boat as you. Like, you see other really good players, and that's when you start thinking about, well, what can I do goal wise? I never had anyone ask me what my goals were at that age. It was just about, trying to get better the next day, to be honest.
Funny because you had Norwich. I was being I had ran into Kevin Constantine, um, Chuck Grillo, and then
Yeah.
ultimately it was JP Parisi that sat me down and he's like, "What's your goal?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What's a? I have no goals. I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
What's like? What was I 16 at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. But we luckily we both like ran into somebody that could help guide us a little bit and teach us. And I didn't finish the
Totally.
whole season there at Shattuck because I didn't realize you had to pay money to go to a prep school. But I started there and I got to play every day for months. And
Yeah.
that completely changed my life and my outlook on hockey. Instead of playing 2 days a week, you're literally on the ice every day.
Well, it's amazing how much better you get that when that happens too, right?
Especially at that age, right?
Totally.
I could be on the ice every day right now. I'm never going to get better. But
Yeah.
at that
Agreed.
age, that's when it's important. Like, and people just don't get it, and they don't get it has to be your choice.
Totally.
You can't force the kids. So all right,
I
so
always tell people, like, if the parents are driving the bus, it's not going to go very far, right? If the kid's the one that is wanting it, I mean, it's up to him at that point how far the bus goes.
yeah, 100%, 100%. So you get into coaching. What's your first coaching job here in Utah?
So I don't know if this name will ring a bell to you. Do you remember Zach Hedrick?
Oh yeah, of course.
So Zach, I was playing, just doing pickup or something, and over that summer that we moved here to Park City, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for guys that played hockey. What's your story?" um, and I started coaching. I believe it was a U14 AA team for the regulators program
Oh,
back in Salt Lake. That was my first coaching experience. I went right into being the head coach for that team. That was super fun. Coming straight from playing to coaching was a blast. That team, I believe it was actually the first year that program had a U14 team, and we got to play the Grizzlies for states. It was a super fun experience. And then from there, that was really, not much of a commitment, right? It was, 2 or 3 days a week. I was able to, I had a side job, if you will, right? I was delivering pizza actually in Park City for Devonza's.
nice.
And that first season was when I started, thinking about, do I really want to get into coaching? Do I want to make this my job? And I had such a good time doing it that first season that it seemed like a no-brainer to me. And then the next year I worked under Ricard Gronberg as his assistant coach for their U18
Cool
AAA team.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. He, like, the first coach I ever coached under, right, as an assistant coach is Ricard. I got super lucky in that regard. and that just happened to fall into my lap by running into Zach at a drop in. I think it was at Murray.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that's how it usually happens in hockey. I mean, anytime we see somebody that we know has played somewhere, we're like,
Yeah,
hey, we're gonna use you
yeah,
to help. Either you're gonna bolster my men's league roster, or we're gonna definitely use you to help coach the kids around here, and we've done
totally.
that since day one.
I think it was the first week I lived in Park City. I was at a concert and with my wife, didn't know anyone in town. Someone came up to me and because I looked like a hockey guy and was like, "Hey, do you play hockey? I have a men's league. What's your story?" We started talking about hockey. He's like, and that's how I got my first men's league team in Park City was at a concert.
Because you had like a mullet, a hockey,
It's
you had
something I don't
the
even
hockey
remember what
lettuce.
it was. I don't even.
That's
Maybe I was wearing the sweatsuit jacket. I don't know.
yeah, it could be. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Park City Hockey, what you do with Park City Hockey, and what your let's talk about goals there too. What are your goals with Park City?
Yeah. So the goal in Park. So I got involved in Park City just because basically it started. I live up here. I was coaching in Salt Lake, but living in Park City. The regulators program was out of the Oval, so it was quite a commute.
Right.
I was living in town in Park City, so even more of a commute. And that was a AAA program, so it was 4 or 5 days a week. We practiced in the late afternoon, so going through that West Valley traffic to get to the Oval. I wanted to see if there was anything available in Park City. Obviously, I played men's league up here in Park City while I was coaching in Salt Lake, so I had a few connections. And my buddy Aaron Dufford, who was running the program at the time, was wanting to step away, and so I threw my name into the hat, and I got offered the coaching director job, hockey director, I believe is the title that I was offered, and that's my title now. So I basically here in Park City, I pick the coaches, right? I coach a bunch of teams. I coach 4 teams right now. Um, I help the on ice product, if you will, helping the newer coaches, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, that kind of thing. Basically worried about the hockey side of running an organization, which is why I feel like I have a really awesome job. I don't have to worry about a whole lot of the administrative stuff, right? And that's kind of what drives some coaches wild. Is all the stuff that doesn't involve hockey. And luckily, I have a really good board and some really awesome volunteers in Park City that I can let them handle the admin, and it works pretty well, I think.
So describe how you guys are set up. Because you're coaching Park City High School too, right?
Correct.
And then you're
So
coaching Double A also.
yeah, so the youth program is separate from the high school, but it's a lot of the same players, right? I mean,
Right.
it's my 16 AA team has 5 or 6, 7 kids from my high school team on it as well. I like coaching the high school level. It's not one doesn't I could do one or the other, right? If I chose to, but I choose to want to coach the high school team as well on top of being the hockey director. The schedule for high school is awesome. It lends itself to me being able to do that. Up here in Park City, we're able to practice right after school, so before the youth teams are even close to being on the ice. But yeah.
Okay. Um, and your Park City High School team, like you guys are just going to be predominantly champions because of the way you've been able to structure that, right?
Uh,
You basically have built a
yeah,
feeder team.
yeah. I would hate to go that far and say we're gonna
Well,
be
that's
champions.
I don't
You
want
know
you
what
to
I mean?
jinx yourself. I know there's some
Absolutely
superstitions,
not.
but
We
when
had a
you
really good team last year and we didn't win, right?
right, right.
Yeah, I think we are in a pretty good circumstance compared to a lot of the other high schools. We have our own sheet of ice, right? We have the ability to practice right after school. We have our own program that feeds our high school, if you will. Um, so it definitely lends itself to us. We should be good, right? We have
Absolutely.
60, 70 kids at our varsity tryout. I don't think there's very many other schools or even, the combined teams that have even close to that. So we should be good, right? Every single one of my players on on our varsity team here in Park City either plays currently AA or has played for multiple years AA growing up. Right. So we definitely have a good talent pool to pick from.
Yeah, that's how Brighton ran for years here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was before your time, but in my time, they had
They're still really good.
Yeah, their junior high, their high school right across the street from Conwood Heights. They had a hockey class. They had more practices than the rest of us. And I wish, instead of being jealous about that kind of stuff, that we could all find a way to get into like more rinks or just better ice time, or, if they'd open up that 3:30 or 3 o'clock across the board and let high schools get on there. I think we could all feel better.
If we all get what we're hoping for and we get an NHL team here, you might see some of those changes, right?
That's what I keep saying. And I know I've been on the news a ton lately. One, because I work for the news, and two, because we're talking about the NHL. And yesterday, all last week when I was on the news, I was like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. We're looking for expansion. And then I get a phone call because I'm like, the Phoenix thing's dead. Yeah. Because they've got, that ownership group said they bought land. And then I get a phone call from somebody. I'm not supposed to say who or anything, but they said, hey, the Phoenix thing's not dead.
Yeah.
They have until June 24th to have everything locked down, or that team might be sold to Utah, and they could be playing here next year.
Could you imagine a team here in 6 months?
It's unreal.
It's so exciting.
Talking about what you're talking about and what we're talking about right now. If you look at the way Vegas did it, and if you look at the way, if you're going to grow your own fans, you go build a couple more rinks, and you do away with the way we're doing travel teams and stuff right now. Build a few more rinks, let kids grow up playing, let non-parents pick like a select team, and then that's the select team per rink. Those rinks play the other rinks. Yep. And then out of that select team, you pick Team Utah. And now all of a sudden you have legit AAA. You have legit, and that's only going to happen if we get the NHL. It's only going to happen if we get somebody that's in here that says, hey, we need to build more rinks to build our fan base. We'll put more money into it. And
that's the hope.
The parents are amazing volunteers, but they also get in their own way all the time because they.
Totally. I mean, I'm a hockey parent now too. I have 2 kids playing. And sometimes those thoughts that I don't want parents thinking run through my own head,
Yeah, it's impossible not to, because no matter what you are, what your intentions are, I was the same. Like, it was really hard for me. I got really lucky towards the end, but you want your kid to play every game. You want your kid to get the most experience. Oh, yeah. You always think your kid's better than maybe they really are.
It's human nature.
Yeah, and I tried to be. I got lucky because as my son got older, I had 2 goalies on my team, and that's easier or harder depending on how it goes. But I always had 2 goalies. I had my son and I had somebody else that were awesome.
Yeah.
And then they had a great relationship. Because at first I had goalies that wouldn't come play for me because they're like, well, you're just going to pick your son. And I'm like, no, I won't. Well, maybe you're right. I don't know. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to be unbiased, but we get in our own way as parents. It's
totally. That's why one of the things my wife and I have talked about, I do not want to coach my kids their whole lives. Right. Yeah. I have coached my daughter. I don't coach her currently. She's 12U now. I may never coach her again, right, as the head coach for her team. I coach my son's team now, his 10U team. And this is my 2nd year coaching him. And I see that he now needs someone else, right? He's starting to get to the age where dad doesn't need to be the coach anymore.
Yeah. And that's amazing, as long as there are people that see the problem with somebody like you is you have way more experience.
Yeah.
Like real hockey experience, real hockey knowledge.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to share that with your kids. And I guess you have to do that in days you don't practice, but you also don't want to be detrimental to what your kids' coaches are trying to say. It's a fine line. It's hard to balance it.
Well, I also have a unique situation, and I'm the hockey director, right? So I essentially pick the coaches, right? I essentially pick the coaches for who my kids are going to potentially play for. And so I trust the guys and gals that have put in those roles. And I also know them a little bit more than maybe just the average hockey parent knows their coach.
Yeah.
If I was not able to, trust and know that the coach has my child's best interest in mind, then it would be, maybe I would want to coach them more.
Yeah. And my last couple years of coaching, well, my last year was with the Ogden Mustangs, and that was completely different because it was junior A. I had a bunch of players that or junior A minus, as I've called it a couple times, and I make a lot of people angry when I call that. But it's not USHL, it's not NAHL, it's pay to play. Well, it's not this year, but it was pay to play, and I was coaching, and I didn't have to worry about parents. I didn't have to worry about a lot of the stuff. I just got to coach,
Yeah.
and that was amazing. But building up to that, I I did step out of the way and let my son play for somebody else,
Yeah.
other coaches, and I think it was good for him and it was good for me.
Yeah.
I also tried to not coach him when he was younger, growing up,
Yeah.
just same reason, like let other people be involved, and it's the same thing. I do this every for 19 years. I ran a hockey camp,
Uh-huh.
and I mainly did it. I started with goalies because I wanted to bring, instead of making all the goalies go to Minnesota or
Yeah.
Banff or whatever, like bring the best coaches here, make it affordable. And then also, whatever I say to my son, he's not going to listen. But if Jordan Parisi says it, he'll listen.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
sometimes your kid will listen better to somebody else because, you're just dad.
Yeah, totally.
So what are your goals with Park City? How do you see it going from here? What are you trying to build? And like, what's the future look like for Park City and for Mike Adamek?
Honestly, Park City is it's a big organization, right? We have, beginner programs all the way up to the AA level. We're not looking to try and, get into the AAA realm. I don't think we have enough talent in our program alone to even come close to competing at that, right? My biggest goal is to offer an opportunity for kids to get better, right? And stay close to home. It truly is about trying to develop players for me. I, Obviously winning is cool, but I really don't care if a 12U team wins 5 tournaments in one season. Did the players get better? And that a lot of us say that, but it truly is my goal. And I think it goes back to my upbringing as a player. Like, you just have to get better day by day. And we talked about it. I didn't even set goals really until I was 15, 16 years old. I want our program to obviously have a good reputation and standing in the hockey world as well. That's a big thing for me, and that's a lot harder to do than you would expect. You know, so trying to bring in the right people to influence our players and coach our players and be around our players on a daily basis. That's the biggest thing to me, is trying to help each player get better from one season to the next. And I think if we do that, we are able to use our program, it being so big, having beginner to AA. That's exactly what we should be worried about, is having those beginners at 7, 8 years old eventually get to that AA level when they're 13, 14, right? I also want to move kids on to the next level, and I would love to not have to want kids, or kids to not want to have to leave the state at 14, 15 years old. That's another one of my goals. I don't think it's in the best interest of lots of kids. Yeah, of course, there's young kids that are 14 or 15 that are mature enough to do that. Every once in a while, you don't see it very often, right? And I don't want my kids to have to leave home at 14 or 15 years old.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And what you're talking about too, just to remind parents, that's really the goal. The overall goal is to develop kids, make sure they're having fun. But my I always, if we were dominating tournaments, I made sure we didn't go back to that tournament.
Yeah.
I picked tournaments that we were gonna maybe go 2-2.
Yeah.
And I was trying to pick so that we were 500 at the end of the year. I wanted us
Yeah.
to win. I wanted us to lose. I wanted the kids to grow and learn. But at the end of the season, when you've done that, one of the seasons as coaching, I kept us right there. I took us to Minnesota and put us in hard tournaments. Then I took us to Michigan and put us in a hard tournament.
Yeah.
Well, in Minnesota, a couple of my players got scouted and
Yeah.
they got offers to finish the year juniors. And I'm like, absolutely go.
Yep.
And my parents were like, well, they can't leave. What about national championships? I'm like, yeah, that's great. Our kids are going to go. It's no different than if they got injured or whatever. Now somebody else gets to step up. Those
Totally.
guys get to move on to whatever they wanted to move on to. But a lot of parents just lose sight of, let's develop as people and as players.
Another thing, Jay, is that I've started to notice is some teams want to play like 70 games a year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of goes directly in the face of what USA Hockey is telling us is the best development model, right? You're playing 70 games a year at 12 years old. That means you're probably only practicing 25, 30 times, unless you're on the ice every single day throughout the season, right? So that's another thing. I try to, we try up here in Park City. My 16 team is going to end up playing 35 games a season, right?
That's a great goal. I mean, that's the number you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, yeah, it's different than when we grew up. I have a nephew that plays baseball, and he really likes baseball. So all of a sudden he's in year-round baseball. He's playing 55 to 70 games a year. He's 12. He shouldn't be playing at 12. But now parents have the ability to set him up and always find these, tournament leagues, or it's crazy to me. It's crazy. You're going to burn them out.
You would think, coming from the hockey director in Park City, that I would support, kids playing hockey 12 and a half months a year. Yeah. I actually, my son plays baseball for 3 months. I actually help coach his baseball team in the summer.
Nice.
We still skate, right? He still goes to our summer ice. Julia, my daughter, still skates, once or twice a week throughout the summer, but it's not 12 months grind for them. You know what I mean? I don't want hockey to become a grind until they choose that they want it to be a grind,
Yeah, a lot of the best college coaches are telling parents, like, hey, we need kids that are playing multiple sports to help develop like other aspects of this sport. And I'll tell you, when my son was I think he was 16, 16, and he was playing for the junior Grizzlies, and the coach called me and said, hey, we can't have your son missing hockey practice for soccer practice at the beginning of the season. And I said, the season's barely overlapped. There's like a month.
Yeah.
And he only missed for games. He wouldn't miss hockey practice for soccer practice. And I said, they only overlap a month. And you guys started way earlier than we're supposed to start anyway.
Yeah.
And the reply was, you're a hockey guy. You need to support your kid in being a hockey player. And I said, I'm a parent.
Yeah.
If my son decides he wants to be a pirate next week, I'm going to support him being a pirate. But Absolutely. He wants to be a soccer player. And granted, it ended up biting me because he ended up becoming a college soccer player instead of college hockey player. But it's just weird because some coaches, it's awesome that you have that philosophy in the position you're in, because a lot of people in your position here lose sight of that. And they're like, it's hockey, hockey, hockey. And if your kid's not in, then they're not in. They're not 100% hockey, then they're not in our program.
So Jay, at the beginning of the season this year, Brody, my son, was still playing baseball, in September. I dropped him off at baseball practice to go coach his team at the rink. So he missed hockey practice. Obviously I didn't. I'm the coach of the team. But the overlap is kind of frustrating as a coach from time to time, right? And especially like I have kids that play football. And that's the scary overlap. Inevitably they're going to get hurt in some way. It always seems to happen. But yeah, I definitely, and I think the game has changed even since we were younger kids. It's way more athletic of a game now. And I think that playing other sports lends itself to developing as an athlete, not just as a hockey player,
Yep. Way more agile. You're better with your feet. You're better with your hands, whatever it is. You learn other agility from other sports for sure.
Absolutely.
I hope the parents that are listening to this and the other coaches that are listening to this remember that, because it's so tough on your kid, and you just want to let them do what they want to do.
Yeah.
JP gave me some advice because I was talking to him about like, oh, what do I do? Like, when Tegan was 14, Shattuck wanted him to go there and play. And I'm like, well, what do I do? He doesn't want to. And he's like, I wouldn't send my kid here at 14. He's like, until your kid's like 15, 16, as long as they want to go down to the pond, it doesn't matter if they're playing AA or AAA. As long as they want to be playing, let them play wherever they're going to play, and let them play whatever sports they're going to play.
Yeah.
When they hit like 15, 16 years old, they're going to start having to, focus on one sport anyway, or maybe be it through high school.
Yeah.
But let your kid do what your kid wants to do, and don't
Absolutely.
grab the bus, like you were saying.
Yeah. Jack Skilly and I were talking about this the other day. Um, there's no need to leave the state or your program or wherever you are currently until you are the dominant player in that area, right? If you're scoring 100 points in a double A season, then yeah, you probably need to go play triple A, right? But to go play somewhere else just to say you went to play somewhere else it's not usually the right way to go about it, you know?
Cost your parents more money
Yeah.
for maybe not anything better.
Hey, don't
It's
get me wrong. There is
growing ways.
kids there is kids that's the right route for them, right? I
Yeah.
did that. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have been it. I wouldn't have accomplished the things I did without doing that. I didn't do that until I was 16. Um, and I think I was a pretty mature 16-year-old. I'd like to think, right? I wasn't getting in trouble. I had kept my good grades, all that kind of stuff. But there was other kids on my team that weren't doing that, you know. And we did not even, my parents and I talked about it the year before I left, but not really. But it was, my dad told me, well, go out and dominate and score, 150 points in your double A season here or your triple A season here in California. Make your team better, do whatever you like, make the 16 festival team, and then we could talk about it. I think that's a good kind of advice to live by is dominate where you are before you think it's time to move somewhere else.
100%. That's great advice. I love Jack Skilly. We had him on the show a few months ago, and it's funny. He's like, "Hey, I've got like 15 to 30 minutes because I'm just in between a few things."
Yeah,
But when you get him talking, he gets so passionate about hockey. That was our longest episode ever. I think we went like an hour and 45 minutes because he's so passionate and he knows exactly, like, he's got a good idea of what to do. But he's like, "Oh, I only have 15 minutes." Get him talking about hockey, and he'll take your whole day.
that's exactly how every one of our conversation goes. Jack and I have become pretty good buddies. We hang out away from the rink and stuff. But whenever we start talking about youth hockey, it goes forever.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
It's so important to have guys like you and him and Jordan involved in this market now. The passion, the experience, and the knowledge that you guys bring to it. The fact that you will spend an hour plus talking about youth
yeah,
hockey when
yeah.
you're grown men with wives and children. You could go off and do whatever you want, but you're passionate about it and you're willing to sacrifice yourself to make this market better. And that's exactly what we need in this market.
I appreciate that, and I would say that Jack is definitely super passionate. I like to think I am too. I don't think you do, youth hockey for 15, 16, 16 years now without being passionate about it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
And
Um,
if you're not passionate about it, you probably shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, because the kids will take a lot out of you. It's
Absolutely.
super rewarding if you're passionate about it and if you believe in it
Absolutely.
and you love it. And if you're
Man,
burned out,
some of my best seasons were with teams that weren't necessarily super successful, but the kids got better. They had a great time. They came together. They were playing for the team. You know what I mean? Those were the most fun seasons, in my opinion.
yeah, I had 2 seasons like that where we were 500 and those kids were growing, and I ended up I'm still friends with a lot of them. I get invited
Yep.
to their weddings. I get invited, like, even if they're just doing whatever, I'll get like a text like, "Hey, we're going out. My band's playing at this bar," or,
Yeah,
we're
that's
getting married, or
hilarious.
we're doing this, or, it's cool. And those are relationships that mean a lot to me, and those were really good years. I hope for them, and definitely for me. It helped me grow as a coach and as a person, I think.
Totally. I skied with one of my former players on Friday for like
Nice.
4 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's perfect.
he's 31 now. It
Oh
made me
man.
feel so old. Made me feel so old.
Jeez.
It made
Yeah.
him feel old too, though.
Yeah. Well, that part happens.
Yeah.
Before we go, I'm excited to see what happens with Park City. We'll be covering high school and we'll be covering everything that's
Yeah.
going on. Do you want to touch any more on what you think? It's the biggest topic. What do you think the NHL, what do you think the odds are of it coming here? And what do you think it'll do to this market?
I mean, I don't know anyone in the know, right? But everyone that I know in the hockey world seems to think that we're going to get a team. Um, it'd be amazing. My wife and I agreed months ago that if we get a team here, we're buying season tickets. I'm still going to be a Kings fan, but I think it'd be unbelievable for our hockey market and as a whole. Like we talked about it for a quick second. If we wanted to go the rep way, like most Canadian towns do, where it's you play for your rink, then you play for your all-star team at the rink, and then you play the other rinks. That's the rep. It's the representative route. If we ever wanted to get there, that's where hockey becomes, huge, like baseball is here now. We need an NHL team. I think you said it too. And I literally pray for it to happen.
Yeah, me too. Well, because hockey is my religion, so I guess that's
Totally.
what I'd be doing. Well, great. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it was great. I think it's important for everybody to get to know you. You're tucked away in Park City, so I think a lot of our audience maybe hasn't had the opportunity to really get to know what you guys are about.
Yeah.
And before we go, you've talked about Mark quite a bit.
Yeah.
Are you guys still doing your camp here every summer?
Yeah. So my brother Mark, the one I was talking about, who's a year younger, and then my other brother Nick, who runs. So Mark is the U18 AAA coach for the Milwaukee Junior Admirals in Wisconsin. They play in the Midwest Elite League. And then Nick, my youngest brother, runs the Steele County Blades, Tier 3 team in the USPHL in southern Minnesota there. We do a camp up here in Park City every summer for U10 through U14s. It's a 4-day camp. We're doing it here at the end of June. We have not opened our registration yet, but that should be open here in the next couple of weeks. And we're talking about maybe doing some other things while my brothers are here in Utah, but nothing I can announce at this point, right? We're talking about maybe doing some other clinics and camps and stuff like that while they're here. We use that kind of as the get together for the year, where the three brothers get to spend some time together. We were all really close growing up. As hockey brought us even closer. So it's fun to have that week to 10 days where they're in town and staying at our house. And we put on a hockey camp while they're here for fun. Park City is really the only city we're going to do camps in. And it's your basic summer hockey camp, right? We're doing the skill drills. We're doing lots of power skating. We're not doing any sort of, scrimmages, if you will, or gameplay. It's literally a skills camp. I would say the skill level is probably your average travel player, 10, 12, and 14-year-olds.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when the registration does come open, what's the website?
It is threebrothershockey.org.
.org. Okay, so
Yep.
threebrothershockey.org.
And
All right, Mike.
our registration page will be up there in the next week or two, hopefully.
Okay, perfect. This is
Thanks, Jay.
January 30th. Tomorrow's February 1st, so probably mid to end of February. Be looking for that. All right, perfect. Mike, thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate it. And again, we appreciate what you're doing for hockey up there in Park City, even though you're
thanks, Jay.
Beating our Spartans, my former team. But we're
it was really good talking to you, man. I haven't seen you in a long time. Your show's awesome, and I wish you guys nothing but the best.
Awesome. We appreciate it.
Maybe we can buy our season tickets next to each other next year.
Let's do it. I'm hoping to e-bug in the NHL, but that's a whole other thing. All right, and that is the Puck Report.